Hey, and welcome to today's episode of Data Roll Podcast. This is Stan, your favorite podcast host, and today, together with Kasia Kosyl from Astral Forest, we are continuing our discussion about the Astral Insight Assistant, which applies AI on top of the company data. So, let me warm us up with this very first question that actually came to my mind right now, because we hear that on one side there's ChatGPT, then you have Gemini, Llama, you name it, like dozens and dozens of these new LLM languages, models, engines appear on a daily basis. The more you read about it, the more you discover that there's more and more and more coming. And what's actually the difference between all of them, and how does this impact your job?
So most of the popular LLMs are for general purpose, I would say. So they were trained on the vast amount of data, and the newer models are launched. They are trained at more and more data, which impact how much they can predict the most probable, the best answer. So I wouldn't say that there's the best LLM model that we are going to choose. Each cloud provider like that, Azure, Amazon, Google, have their own set of LLMs. There are other LLMs, like for example, Llama. So we can play with them, check which one of them is the best suited for our case. But also, if we want to somehow incorporate costs, we can also want to take a look at that local LLMs, which we can just install on our machine, which should be powerful enough to run that LLMs. But as I told you, they are good for the simple, predictive, not too complicated tasks. What can be other differences? You can also spot that there are that general models, but they are also models that are specialized at some specific field. Like, for example, Sonnet is better at programming than, for example, GPT. That general, because it was trained rather for that purpose. And what's important in our AIA is that we can exchange the models. For each of the tasks, we can use a different model. For most of the tasks, that general models like ChatGPT, Gemini, they are good enough for most of the tasks. But if we want to tailor, for example, just crafting a SQL query, we can use another model, and our framework will be still stable. I mean that many components can be exchanged, but the framework will be still the same and functional. So once the new model appears, we can exchange it.
Okay, perfect. So you are not bound by a specific technology, right?
No, we also do not fine-tuning the models, because the models are changing so rapidly that investing in just fine-tuning the model might be not efficient. So that's why we rely on the knowledge base that is stable, and not on the just fine-tuning the available models for that specific task that we have.
Okay, perfect. And actually what struck me is that, hey, I know that now whenever as a user of ChatGPT or any other LLM, I get this pop-up window very often. Hey, whatever data you're using will be used to train our models, etc. And actually, especially, when I'm looking for the cheesecake recipe, it's fine. But whenever I'm using corporate confidential data, I specifically do not want people and other companies to learn about it, to what's more, to train their models on that. It needs to remain secure. And now you were telling that, hey, I thought about the local models. You install the model on a server, which is somewhere in my server warehouse, maybe in the basement, wherever, it doesn't matter where. But at least I know where it sits. When, on the other hand, if I went and started using one of the cloud models, isn't it that I am actually feeding Azure with my company data?
It all depends what you are signing, I would say, because if you are just using the chatgpt.com webpage, yes, you also agree that your cheesecake recipe that you are asking for will be used to later on improve the models. But most of the cloud providers allow you to create your own instance within your subscription of an LLM. So all the data are not used generally generally because you have to look at the options, look what you are signing for. But there are options that you just set up your own instance or, for example, ChatGPT and use it only for your purpose. So all the data are still within your subscription. So it won't be used to learn the models as long as you don't agree for it. So most of the cloud providers allow such an options for the companies, but for the regular user that just open the browser and ask Copilot or whatever for the cheesecake, that will be used by default. But there are options that protect you from using your data elsewhere, I would say.
Okay, so basically, if I get it right, there's so to say, a public and a private version, and we can use the private version in the cloud and we're safe.
Yes, but you have to carefully read the specific conditions. Yeah, the agreements.
Read the fine print, that's right. And especially when I think about this, today, if you are using Office suite like Word, Excel, SharePoint, you could argue that, hey, the data is already in the cloud. It's there on the SharePoint side. And at the same time, within the enterprise agreements, it is not allowed to be reused by Microsoft to actually learn based on that SharePoint documents that you already upload to the cloud. So, okay, I understand that.
We have to somehow trust the cloud providers, but also read the agreements. That's the important part.
That's, let's say, a wise remark. And at the same time, I'm thinking because you as a practitioner, you have seen how things work in practice for real. And I'm sure that at the same time, you have read quite a lot. Now, based on your experience, what are the most popular misconceptions, what people tend to understand incorrectly or misunderstand when it comes to the AI assistant? What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I think that AI became so much popular that people think it will do everything. But there are still problems that can be solved without an AI, and it still can be solved very efficiently, less costly, like the simple script, framework, workflows. So the LLM is not needed when there are simple if-else rules with some numbering values, but LLM shines if-else rules requires understanding of natural language, like, for example, what the user asked, what does the user want, or when we are moving within that unstructured data, like, for example, we are going to browse the PDF files. So the LLM really shines when the understanding of the natural language or somehow the combination of the many unstructured information and analyzing it is needed. So, for example, it's not needed to find an email within the text because we are looking for the @ sign. So there are many simple tasks that can be done without LLM. LLM can do it, but with some probability, somehow it might hallucinate. So there are many things that still can be done efficiently without LLM. And I think that the other misunderstanding is that agents will do everything by themselves. They analyze what needs to be done. They propose actions by themselves. They managing all of that. But in truth, there's no self-sufficient AI assistant because behind the scenes, there's always a system of tools that's supporting the LLM, the specialized agents that they're doing the specific stuff, the well-crafted prompts behind the scenes. So just because a user sees an interface such as ChatGPT, it does not mean that all of the background stuff isn't there. There are a lot of work that people have to craft behind that nice interface.
Okay, you mentioned that crafting, and many times you also spoke about the knowledge base. So what are the most important items on this checklist that you would need to have so that your tool can be successful?
So I mentioned it many times, but that knowledge base is the most crucial part. The proper definition, the KPI definitions, the business definitions, the workflow definitions. If we want to query the data warehouse, the table definitions, the description of the columns. This is all super important for the LLM to understand what it is going to do. Another part that is also crucial in terms of querying the data warehouse is a vast amount of question and answer pairs. Because as the SQL is one language, there can be many flavors. There can be many specific rules, exclusions that they often happening or must be always included in most of the queries. So the LLM needs vast amount of exemplary queries so it can craft the proper query when it sees your question, sees other questions, and the proper queries related to those questions. So it's just not picking the right question from the knowledge base, but it just sees the proper examples and then it crafts the good query that can be run at your data warehouse. And once we are at data warehouse, we need to have a very perfectly designed data warehouse. I mean that the tables should have a nice structure, an intuitive naming convention, an intuitive joins between tables, clear separation between the fact and the information tables. They're just a simple and maybe obvious prerequisites, but it's super important. As I said previously, quality in, garbage out. So the design of the data warehouse is crucial, but also the data quality within those tables is crucial. So the LLM won't find you the best player if you do not have players in the table or they are missing or whatever. So that high quality is also super important. But also we have to be aware of that it won't be a one-shot process. Like we just set up a chatbot and everything will be okay. This is an iterative process and we will have to spend some time with the business users, with the game operators. So they will test it and check if the answers that they are receiving, they are reliable. If the chatbot understands their jargon, their synonyms. Also, that collaboration with the end user is super important.
Okay, and I think that at the same time you have mentioned on top of the two misconceptions that you have spoke about earlier, there's this third misconception. I have already seen some memes flying on the internet that basically the idea was as such. Hey, dear AI, here is my data. It's in a full mess. I just took some extracts from the pump, from the CRM. I dropped it into a huge container. Here's my data. Please go and figure it out.
Yeah, the AI is not, so far, they are not clever enough. I think we should treat them like an entry-level data engineer or data analyst, and we will have to teach him. Teach with, okay, so this is our business. That should be the tables. That's how they should look like. That's how it should be calculated. We have to teach it. It's not just from out of the box.
I've already heard this spot many times. Hey, let's just wait for the AI. It will solve our problems. But then, boom, you're saying, hey, the data quality at the end of the day, this is what is going to drive you. Well, certainly disillusioning for several people, but well, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
What about the plans and the different features that you're working on? Because you've mentioned the capability so on one hand, the chatbot can analyze documents. That's one thing. Another is about the ability to translate questions such as, hey, what was my GGR or which campaign was the most successful? And translating that into SQL code, going to the data warehouse, retrieving and showing the result. What else is on your plate?
Our focus is on DAX queries because many people use Power BI and the LLMs already know how to craft DAX queries, but they have to know the semantic model that we are using. So we are going to do something similar as we did to the SQL mode to the DAX mode. Like it will query the Power BI semantic model. So this will allow users not to just browse through all of the Power BI reports, but just hit directly to that semantic models. So this is one thing that we are going to implement. The second thing is it's already somehow developed, but we want to take it further to web browsing for real-time information. And I think the best example would be the sports books. Like, okay, we want to know something about the bets for the given football match. And we want to know the newest insights from the billboards. So we have to browse it to the internet. We do not have that in the data warehouse. We do not have that in the knowledge base. So we want to have insights from the internet when it is needed, not for every time, but only when it is needed. And I think that it will enrich the power of the LLM models, because LLM models are taught at the specific point of time. Later on, they do not know what happened in the future after they were trained. So they have to look for the most actual answers. And for the sportsbook, it would be very beneficial to develop that branch of the framework. And the last thing that came to my mind, but this will be just a cherry on the top. We already get the data from the data warehouse as a pandas data frame. So we had just to enable it on the front end to download the data if we want to visualize the data with a simple visualizations. So the framework, that interface will be more fancy for the user, more user-friendly, I would say. So that would be the cherry on the top. It will be easy because we already get the data in the proper format just to expose it to the user if the user wants that.
Okay, this is something particularly cool, especially in the context of recent developments. I already saw demos of Claude creating by itself dashboards. So I guess that this is more or less going in this direction to incorporate it into your framework. And also you mentioned this querying the internet. So at the same time, using internal and external resources and combining them all together. This is popular practice in all the tools outside of AI, because even, for example, today, if you'd like to enlist a new player, say registers on a specific brand, we can already verify if that player spontaneously verify if that player has been on the countrywide blacklist. And if that player is banned, this is something that we can already use today by API calls without the AI. But tomorrow in the chatbot, if I understand correctly, the idea is that you could do such a thing at the same time while leveraging the internal information, correct?
Yeah, but this is where AI is good to be used because, for example, I ask a question to a chatbot, but it's not all about just copy-paste the question to the browser and pick the first hyperlink. The LLM will decide how many of my question can be answered with the knowledge base, with the data warehouse that we have, and if it is needed to query for the internet, and what do we need to query in the internet. So that's the place for the LLM to decide based on my natural language-based question, what has to be done.
Okay, so assuming, let's say I ask a specific question and then the tool will decide, hey, this is 50% of the information is in the knowledge base, 20% is in the data warehouse, and 30% is on the internet?
It's rather, I have to search knowledge base. I have to run the query against data warehouse. I have to answer the question by taking some additional information from the internet. It's not like percentages, but it is like rather about the decisions, what to do next. And that decision is passed to the next LLMs based on that result of that specific agent. So it's not like it will handle everything. It just decides what are the next steps, what is needed to answer the user question.
And at the end, it just collates all the data, from those sources.
Yes, but this is another agent with the prompts. The user asks such a question. Here are the info that you need from the knowledge base. Here are the query from the data warehouse, and here are some insights from the internet.
Wow, the way you describe it, it feels like this is a huge army of data professionals that is working. And then do you think that this insight assistant that you're working on, is it going to replace BI teams in operators or game providers or any other companies?
Absolutely not. I think that people are safe, and such assistance, and in this case, as Astral Insights Assistant, is designed to somehow enhance the BI teams and the end users, like the people from the marketing, like the stakeholders, but not replacing them. Because firstly, we will have to create a knowledge base. And we've already, for example, developed few tools that will help us generate a knowledge base, but it will not replace a human review. We can ask LLMs to create some exemplary questions, to create some drafts based on the information that we already provided, but it has to be reviewed by the person. I've already saw some examples when one LLM corrects another LLM, but when I gave it to the end user, they just said, that's the wrong ideas, that's the wrong questions, what happened here? So people reviewing is crucial, and the people from the BI team has to somehow review the syntax. So they have to provide it, they have to review it, and later on they have to maintain it. So we still that people. And another aspect is that people knows what people want to do. The people knows their KPI definitions. The AI agent may propose something, but the people know which exclusions are where the specific filters that we are going to use. So people are the masters of their data. Like the AI won't tell them what to do. They can, but at the end of the day, the people decides what they want from their data. And regarding that BI team, it can somehow pass that ad hoc queries from so they have more time to develop stuff, but they can also use such an agent for crafting drafts of the query, drafts of the reports. They can look for the documentation that is centralized and don't have to browse all the wikis, all the Excels from the users. They all have in one place, so their work is speed up. And also, when they create some documentation, the chatbot can already propose, so here's the documentation of, for example, this report, prepare something similar like this based on what you already did. So it will just empower the BI teams and enhance their productivity, but I think that they won't replace them. The humans still have the last word on any decision.
Okay, so BI teams remain a centerpiece, but somehow their productivity is like 10, 5, or 3 times bigger, yeah?
Yeah, basically that's it.
Okay, understood. Wow, I guess that we are approaching the end of this episode. I already asked you at least a dozen or even more questions. So thanks a lot, Kasia, for this interview.
Thank you so much. It was nice to have a chat with you about chats.
Yeah, so guys, today what we discussed, how AI can solve data problems, how it can replace, or rather not necessarily replace, but to strengthen the BI teams, replace also to some extent, or at least give them a huge helping hand. Thank you, Kasia, once again for presenting your perspective and the Astral Insight Assistant tool. I'm looking forward to hear on more developments and more updates from you, and keeping the fingers crossed for the new discoveries. So that's going to be it for today's episode. I'm signing off for now, and remember, keep rolling with the data.